My hands trembled as I held the envelope, my name scrawled across it in jagged handwriting. I didn't recognize the writing, but the words inside cut deep. Your husband is not who you think he is. Ask him about Elise. Elise. My mind raced, my heart pounding. Derek wouldn't, he couldn't. I grabbed my phone, fingers fumbling. Jenna, it's me. We need to talk now. I paced the living room, bile rising in my throat as I waited for her to arrive. This had to be a sick prank, a cruel joke. Derek and I had our troubles, but he'd never betray me like this. Would he? Jenna burst through the front door, face etched with concern. What's going on? What's happened? Wordlessly, I handed her the note. She scanned it quickly, eyes widening. Who sent this? I don't know. It just arrived today. Jenna guided me to the couch. Breathe, hon. We'll figure this out. Anger flared suddenly. Figure what out? That my husband's screwing around behind my back with someone named Elise? Jenna squeezed my hand. You don't know anything yet. This could just be a fake letter trying to cause trouble. I sighed, my rage dissolving. You're right. I can't believe he'd do this to me. Not after everything. Not after the infidelity years ago. The counseling, his remorse, the promise we'd never go through that again. Jenna pursed her lips. I'll ask Alex to look into it, discreetly. If anything turns up, I swallowed hard. Did I even want to know? The next few weeks crawled by in agonizing slow motion. I scrutinized Derek's every move, looking for cracks in his routine. He seemed the same as always, if a bit distracted. More anonymous letters arrived, hinting at secrets. Elise's name echoed in my mind. Alex uncovered the first clues. Records of lavish gifts, a paper trail linking Derek and someone named E. Montgomery, but no concrete evidence of an affair, until the phone records. Late-night calls and texts to a number I didn't recognize, thousands of them over the past 6 months. No way it was for business. Rage simmered in my veins. How could he do this to us? After everything we'd survived? I confronted Derek one night after work, casting aside pretense. Who is she, Derek? He froze. What are you talking about? Don't play dumb. Who's Elise? Are you sleeping with her? Panic flitted across his face. No, of course not. There's no one else, I swear. I slammed the phone records down. Then explain this. Explain the gifts you sent her, the trips you took together. Explain the constant calls and texts behind my back. Derek paled. Marlene, please. My hands clenched. How long, Derek? How long have you been lying to me, betraying our vows, making a fool of me? Tears filled his eyes. I never meant. I love you, Marlene. Please let me fix this. I turned away, disgusted. Save it. I'm done with your lies. I had my proof now. My husband's betrayal laid bare. This was only the beginning. I would make him pay for every sleepless night, every moment he made me doubt myself, for breaking vows and my heart all over again. Derek would regret the day he ever heard the name Elise. How could he do this to me again? I fumed, pacing Jenna's living room. Jenna perched on the couch, lips pressed in a thin line. Derek's always been selfish. I warned you when you took him back the first time. I whirled to face her. I thought he'd changed. I thought our marriage meant something to him. Clearly it didn't. Alex's voice was grim. Once a cheater, always a cheater. Jenna shot him a look before turning back to me. What matters now is how you want to handle this. Derek betrayed your trust in the worst possible way. If you want to walk away... Oh, I'm not walking away, I cut in. I'm going to make him pay. Alex raised an eyebrow. What did you have in mind? I took a deep breath. I want to hit him where it hurts. I know things about Derek, secrets he's tried very hard to hide. Like the debt he'd racked up trying to climb the corporate ladder. All those business trips that were just excuses to gamble. I think it's time his pretty little mistress learned the truth about the man she's been spin-screwing. My voice dripped contempt. Once I expose who Derek really is, his affair with Elise will implode. Then I'll take him for everything he's worth. Jenna nodded slowly. All right, if you're sure this is what you want. I've never been more sure of anything. We ironed out a plan over the next few weeks, gathered every shred of evidence about the affair and Derek's lies. Elise thought she was sleeping with an ambitious executive. I couldn't wait to shatter that illusion. I bided my time, pretending I knew nothing, acted the dutiful wife while Derek carried on behind my back. Finally, the perfect opportunity arose, a family dinner at Derek's parents' country club. His parents had always thought I was beneath their precious son. Time to show them how wrong they were. I wore Derek's favorite black dress, wanting to look every inch the calm, confident wife. His parents greeted me with thin smiles and tight hugs. We sat down to dinner, the air simmering with tension. I made idle small talk, waiting for the right moment. Finally, when a lull hit midway through the main course, I struck. "Derek, don't you have some news for your parents?" I kept my tone light and sweet. Derek's fork froze halfway to his mouth. "What are you talking about?" I tilted my head. "Oh, I just thought you might want to tell them about the new baby on the way. They're going to be grandparents after all." His mother gasped. "A baby? But why wouldn't you tell us?" I turned to her with mocking sympathy. "I'm sure Derek was just waiting for the right time, though it is a bit tricky since the mother is his mistress, Elise." Chaos erupted. Derek sputtered denials while his parents shouted recriminations. I sat back and watched it unfold with grim satisfaction. Finally, I slammed my hands on the table, silencing the room. I nudged Derek with contempt. "Go on, then. Tell them. Tell them what a lying, cheating failure you are." Derek shrank under my glare. When he stayed silent, I continued, relishing every word. "You want to know who your son really is? A liar, a fraud, up to his eyeballs in gambling debt. He used company money to finance trysts with his little whore." I slapped the proof down in front of his ashen parents. "So much for your perfect son, but I'm done covering for him. We're over, Derek. I quit." Let his house of cards collapse. I would be there to watch it crumble with a smile on my face. The fallout from the family dinner was swift and severe. Derek bombarded my phone with texts and voicemails, begging for another chance. His parents cut off contact completely, no doubt mortified by their son's disgrace. I ignored it all, refusing to let them guilt me into silence. They made their choices. Now they would face the consequences. The anonymous letters kept coming, hinting at secrets only Derek's mistress could know. I added them to the mounting pile of evidence. Soon, I would have enough to bury them both. I dove back into work, determined not to let Derek's betrayal affect my performance. The office rumor mill churned with speculation about my failing marriage and Derek's tawdry affair. I held my head high through it all. Let them talk. I had nothing to hide. Weeks later, Jenna called with an urgent discovery. "That mistress of Derek's? Her name's not Elise, it's Lisa. Lisa Montgomery." My breath caught. "Montgomery? As in Silas Montgomery?" Silas headed Montgomery Holdings, one of our biggest rivals. If Derek was sleeping with his daughter... "This goes deeper than we thought," Jenna said grimly. "Derek wasn't just cheating on you. He was using your marriage to get close to Montgomery Holdings through Lisa." Red-hot rage flooded me. My hands curled into fists. Bad enough Derek betrayed our vows again. He'd also jeopardized my career and reputation for his own gain. "That bastard," I seethed. "He doesn't just want to destroy our marriage, he wants to destroy me." "We're not going to let that happen." Jenna's voice hardened. "I've been digging into Montgomery Holdings. They're not as clean as they pretend to be." My pulse quickened. "What do you mean?" "Let's just say they have their fair share of skeletons. If this affair goes public, it could take down both Derek and Montgomery." I remembered Silas Montgomery's smug smile at the last trade conference, so assured of his dominance over my family's company. The thought of watching his empire crumble along with Derek's made my blood sing. "Do it," I told Jenna. "Full nuclear exposure. I want everyone to see their lies." I felt a perverse thrill making the plans, like pieces slotting into place. All those years bowing and scraping to get ahead, and for what? Men like Derek and Silas who used and abused anyone foolish enough to trust them. No more. I was done playing nice. The anonymous notes kept arriving, each more ominous than the last. Threats about what would happen if I didn't back down. Lisa clearly realized I wasn't going away quietly. I added the letters to the stack of evidence. Let Derek and his mistress threaten all they wanted. They couldn't intimidate me into silence. Not anymore. For the first time in years, I felt fully empowered. I walked taller, spoke up louder. Derek's betrayal had lit a fire in me, forged me into someone new, someone who wouldn't be pushed around or dismissed. Let them keep underestimating me. They had no idea what was coming. The day of reckoning had arrived. I woke up energized, ready to finally confront Derek and expose his lies. I dressed for battle, in a sharp black pantsuit and heels. Slicked on bold, red lipstick, armor against whatever vitriol Derek threw at me. I felt strong, unbreakable. At the office, I breezed through my morning meetings, anticipation thrumming under my cool exterior. I messaged Jenna and Alex. It's time. During lunch, I asked Derek to meet me in a private conference room. He arrived looking guarded, clearly expecting me to grovel. Not this time. I slid a file folder across the table. Do you know what this is? Derek eyed me warily as he opened it, then paled. Where did you get these? I smiled coldly. Records of all your little trips to the casino, the ones you claimed were for business, gambling away company money to fund your habit. I slapped down another folder. And let's not forget the mountain of debt you've accumulated. Tell me, does your mistress Lisa know about your financial issues? Or did you lie to her like you lied to me? Derek shoved back his chair. Enough. I won't sit here and listen to these outrageous accusations. My hand shot out, clutching his wrist. Oh no, you're going to sit here and listen to every word, unless you want these files leaked to the board. I held his gaze. Well? Sweat beaded his forehead. Slowly, he sat back down. I smiled, all ice. That's what I thought. I slid the divorce papers across the table. Derek stared at them, dumbstruck. Sign them. This marriage is over and you know it. When he still hesitated, I pressed harder. Come on, Derek. Sign the papers so you can run to Lisa with a clear conscience. She is pregnant, isn't she? His head jerked up, eyes wide with shock. I waved a hand. Oh, please. You didn't actually think I was ignorant about your affair this whole time, did you? I leaned forward. Now sign, or everyone we know will find out exactly what kind of man they married. Your choice. With shaking hands, Derek scrawled his signature on the paperwork. I gathered the file folders and stood abruptly. Our lawyers will be in touch about the divorce settlement. Don't even think of trying to screw me over, Derek. You know I can and will destroy you if you do. I walked steadily from the room, head high. The confrontation had gone even better than I planned. Now for the final blow. At dinner that evening, I sat waiting with Jenna and Alex. Derek's parents arrived first, both tense. When Derek joined us, I shared a knowing look with Jenna. Time to light the final fire. We made it through the salad course before I broke the silence. Well, Derek, don't you have an announcement for your parents? Derek paled. Before he could respond, I continued cheerfully. Derek's going to be a father. Isn't that lovely news? A hush fell over the table. Then came the explosion. Derek's parents shouted and raged as Derek sat, condemned. I watched it all with grim satisfaction, the inferno I'd stoked consuming them completely. Finally I stood, silencing the room. I faced my in-laws, triumph surging through me. You're welcome to the cheating mess of a son you raised. Consider this my official resignation from this family. I'm done covering for him. I strode out without looking back, Derek's shouts echoing behind me. I'd laid waste to everything he valued. Now to focus on building myself back up from the ashes. The fallout from my confrontation with Derek was immediate. He blew up my phone, leaving pleading voicemails and apologetic texts. His parents called too, demanding I reconsider. I ignored them all. The time for mercy was over. Jenna came over to debrief. That was an epic takedown. How are you holding up? I sighed. Relieved it's finally out in the open, but I want to make sure he doesn't get away with this. She nodded. What do you need from me? I want to go after Derek financially in the divorce, bleed him dry, and I want to destroy his reputation. Jenna raised an eyebrow. Playing hardball, I like it. I can start drafting aggressive terms for the settlement. Good, he doesn't get to walk away from this unscathed. My phone buzzed with yet another pleading message from Derek. Delete. What about his mistress Lisa? Jenna asked. Any plans there? I smiled slowly. Oh yes. She wanted Derek so badly, she can have what's left of him. I'd spent years buried under Derek's lies. Never again. From now on, people would know exactly who they were dealing with. While Jenna handled the legal side, Alex and I planned Derek's social downfall. A few anonymous tips later, and the story of his tawdry affair and excessive gambling spread like wildfire through the office gossip channels. Derek was promptly placed on leave, pending an ethics investigation. I saved the damning evidence to leak publicly, if needed. With Derek's reputation in tatters, I asked Alex to dig deeper on Lisa. There had to be more ammunition we could use against her. Sure enough, he uncovered her damaging history as a homewrecker. Other affairs, broken engagements, manipulated men. She was a predator, and Derek her latest prey. Armed with the information, I reached out to her directly for the first time. Lisa, we need to talk, woman to woman. She agreed to meet for coffee. As we sat staring at each other over lattes, I felt only cold contempt for the woman sitting across from me. Calculating, manipulative, cruel. She and Derek deserved each other. I slid a file over to her. I assume you know who I am. Lisa glanced through the photos and records inside, then paled. Where did you get these? That's not important. What is important is that you stay away from my husband. She stiffened. Ex-husband. And I'll do as I please. I leaned forward. I know women like you, Lisa. You target married men to satisfy some twisted need for power. I'm sure Derek spun quite the tale to get in your bed. I tapped the file. But lies don't hold up forever. The truth has a way of coming out. I held her gaze. Leave Derek. Focus on that baby, if it's even his, because if you don't, everyone you've ever crossed paths with will learn exactly what kind of person you are. I guarantee it. I left a shaken Lisa behind. Let her worry Derek would learn the truth, too. I wanted her constantly looking over her shoulder, like I'd had to do. Jenna was right. Playing hardball felt good. Taking back my power, exposing the ugliness Derek tried to hide, felt damn near euphoric. No more being the dutiful, forgiving wife. That woman died the day I learned Derek betrayed me again. Now someone new had risen from her ashes, someone who would never be used or dismissed again. I had been reborn, and it was time for my new life to begin. After exposing Derek's lies, I finally felt free. No more constantly looking over my shoulder, wondering when the next betrayal would come. It was liberating. The divorce proceedings advanced swiftly with the mountain of evidence against Derek. My lawyer assured me I'd get everything I asked for in the settlement. Derek didn't stand a chance. His mom still called frequently, pleading with me to give her son another chance. I blocked her number. They'd all shown their true colors. Now, they could live with the consequences. A few weeks later, Jenna called me grimly. We have a problem. Lisa's still in the picture. Derek convinced her the baby is his. I pinched the bridge of my nose. Of course he did. Derek could charm his way out of anything when backed into a corner. She's pressuring him to get shared custody in the divorce, Jenna continued. Playing happy new family. An icy rage filled me. So they thought they could try and play me, even now? Like hell. Set up a family dinner. Here, I want them all under one roof. Time for the final reckoning with Derek, Lisa, and his toxic parents. No more manipulating shadows, everything out in the open. On the night, I dressed in black armor again, bold red lipstick my war paint. Jenna and Alex arrived first, grimly determined. Right on time, Derek walked in with his parents flanking him on either side. Lisa trailed behind, wearing a dress stretched tight over her swollen belly. I greeted them with a shark-like smile. So nice to have the whole family together again. We sat, tension simmering. I kept the conversation light, biding my time, waiting until the main course was served before dropping my first verbal bomb. Lisa, you're positively glowing. When are you due? She blinked, hand going instinctively to her belly. Early next month. How exciting. Derek must be thrilled to welcome his first child. Across the table, Derek paled. Lisa shifted in her seat. Yes, well, we're both very happy. I'm sure, I smiled pleasantly. Though didn't you tell me you two only started seeing each other last fall? What an accelerated timeline. The table went silent. Lisa's eyes widened fractionally. Gotcha. Derek's mom recovered first. That's enough now, Marlene. Stop these ugly accusations. I ignored her, focusing on Lisa. Sweetie, surely you're aware Derek was still very much with me when you supposedly got pregnant? I hope he at least told you the truth about our relationship timeline. You lying bitch, Derek spat. Don't pretend our marriage was some happy fantasy. You checked out years ago. I shook my head. And whose fault was that, Derek? Or have you forgotten your chronic habit of screwing anything that walks? Chaos erupted. Lisa accused Derek of deceit. He shouted desperately, appealing to his parents for backup. They in turn screamed at me for causing a scene. Finally, I slammed my hand down, fed up. Enough, I'm done with the lies. I locked eyes with Lisa. That baby is not his. Stunned silence. Lisa's hand clutched her belly. How dare you? I tossed the paternity test results down with a thwop, watching the color drain from Derek's face. No more hiding. Lisa dissolved into tears. Derek vehemently denied it, but I could see the truth dawning in his eyes. They'd tried to play me, and lost. Badly. Checkmate. I stood up calmly and addressed Lisa. You want Derek? You can keep him, but this ends tonight. We're done. I turned and strode away, finally free. Let Derek and Lisa turn on each other. My hands were clean. The family dinner felt like a tipping point. After exposing Lisa's lies, it was all finally crumbling for her and Derek. Lisa disappeared from the social scene, no doubt embarrassed by the entire affair. Derek bombarded me with angry texts, but I stood firm. We were over. Professionally, things shifted in my favor too. With Derek disgraced, upper management started relying on me more. I stepped up, determined to prove myself. A few weeks later, Jenna called me excitedly. "You're never going to believe who just reached out to me." "Who?" "Liam Montgomery, Lisa's ex-husband." I sat up straighter. This was an interesting development. What did he want? "To talk to you. Apparently you two have a common enemy." I considered this. Liam had divorced Lisa years earlier under mysterious circumstances. If anyone knew secrets I could use against her, it was him. Set up a meeting, but discreetly. If word got back to Derek or Lisa... Jenna agreed. "I'll handle it. This could be the ammunition we need to finally shut them down for good." We met Liam at a small cafe downtown. I studied the handsome, well-dressed man as he approached. He had a wounded air about him, despite the tailored suit and easy smile. "Marlene, thank you for meeting me." We exchanged pleasantries before I cut to the chase. "What do you want with me, Liam?" His face darkened. "Straight to business. I appreciate that. We have a common enemy in your husband and my ex-wife." I raised an eyebrow. "Go on." "I have information that could ruin them both socially and professionally, but I'll only share if we work together." I considered his offer. Liam had resources and insider access at his family's company. Combined with my evidence against Derek, we could inflict real damage. I extended my hand. "You have a deal." Liam broke into a sharp grin. "Excellent." We hashed out a plan to strategically leak information about Derek's unethical behavior and Lisa's sordid history. A coordinated takedown. Within days, the gossip rags were buzzing with sordid rumors about Derek's gambling and Lisa's affairs. The business journals questioned shady dealings at Montgomery Holdings. Their reputations were being shredded. But I wasn't done yet. Liam came through with one final bombshell. Evidence linking Lisa and Derek to corporate espionage against my family's company. Enough proof for authorities to get involved. I called an emergency meeting with the executives and board members, Liam by my side. As we presented the damaging documents, outrage erupted around the room. Derek's treachery went deeper than any of us realized. He'd abused his position to undercut the very company that had given him a career. The board immediately voted to fire Derek and pursue criminal charges. Justice was finally being served. As we left the meeting, Liam turned to me. "I know this was about revenge for you, but I wanted to say thank you. Exposing Lisa and Derek, it brought me closure too." I saw the sincerity in his eyes. Liam hadn't just been motivated by payback. He needed to regain control after Lisa destroyed his life too. I understood completely. "Of course. And thank you for having the courage to come forward. I'm just sorry you got caught in Lisa's web too." Liam nodded, looking thoughtful. "You know, now that it's all over, maybe we could get dinner sometime." I considered him handsome, successful, principled. A man I knew I could trust. "I'd like that," I replied, and I meant it. With Derek ruined professionally and Lisa in hiding, I decided to make my final move, seizing control of the company from Derek's family. As acting head of the business, I reviewed operations with a critical eye, building an airtight case for mismanagement under my father-in-law's leadership. With Liam's help, I also uncovered financial irregularities suggesting embezzlement. The old guard had been bleeding the company dry for years. No more. I called an emergency shareholders meeting and presented the damning evidence. When I proposed a vote of no confidence in the current leadership, the motion passed swiftly. The board named me as interim CEO. After the meeting, I stopped by my father-in-law's office. He sat grimly packing his possessions into a box. "I hope you're satisfied, taking everything from our family." His voice shook with bitterness. I tilted my head. "Satisfied? No, I won't be satisfied until your toxic son is permanently out of my life." My father-in-law slammed his fists on the desk. "Damn you, Marlene. Derek loved you." I laughed coldly. "Loved me? Is that what you call his chronic affairs and betrayals?" I leaned in close, punctuating each word. "He never loved me." With that, I walked out, leaving the old man fuming impotently. One chapter closed. With the company secure, I turned my attention to finalizing the divorce. My lawyer was ruthlessly efficient, securing me the house, investments, and a generous settlement in return for keeping Derek's misdeeds quiet. The day the papers were signed, I invited Jenna over to celebrate. I raised a glass. Here's to new beginnings. She clinked her glass against mine. To new beginnings, and Marlene 2.0, who takes no shot from anyone. I laughed, feeling lighter than I had in years. Derek was finally out of my life for good. Marlene 2.0, I liked the sound of that. A few weeks later, Liam took me out to dinner at an upscale restaurant downtown. Over wine and candlelight, our talk turned serious. I have to confess, I had an ulterior motive asking you here tonight, Liam said. I want to make this, us, official. He took my hands in his. You are an extraordinary woman, Marlene. I know we started off with revenge in common, but what I feel goes so much deeper now. I looked into his earnest eyes and saw genuine emotion there, a real second chance. I feel the same way, I confessed. I tried to deny it at first, but you've shown me I can love and trust again. I want that future with you. Liam broke into a smile. Then let's build it together. The next day, he accompanied me to Derek's mother's palatial estate. I handed her a copy of the divorce decree. It's done. Your son is dead to me now in every way. I trust there will be no further contact from any of you. My former mother-in-law glared. You'll regret this, Marlene. I glanced at Liam and squeezed his hand. No, I don't think I will, but Derek will, for the rest of his life. We walked out together into the sunshine, leaving the toxic past behind. I had everything I needed right beside me. The story of my marriage's ugly implosion made headlines for a while, but I held my head high through the gossip and whispers. I had nothing to hide anymore. In time, new scandals seized the public's attention. My reputation recovered, stronger than ever. With Liam as my partner, I transformed the company into a thriving modern business, and I took my rightful place as CEO on my own terms. My past self was gone, a distant memory. Now a powerful, unstoppable woman had risen in her place. Unbreakable, unstoppable, unleashed at last. This was my time now.
Hello, my name is Karen, and I'm a 58-year-old woman. My husband passed away about 7 years ago, but I still work. I have 3 children. 3 live in different states across the country, each with their own families. I'm very lucky to have such a big family. One of my children, Zachary, still lives in our hometown. He met his wife, Sarah, at the local community college. I liked her, and though I didn't think my opinion was very important, I was happy if Zachary was happy. They got married quickly and continued their education in their chosen fields. After getting good jobs and saving some money, they decided to have a child. I was thrilled to have another grandchild to spoil, but Sarah was particular about when I could visit and for how long. This was understandable in William's first year, but it seemed strange even when he was 6. However, I accepted it because every family is different. Before I knew it, 14 years had passed, and because I wasn't allowed much time with William, we didn't form a strong bond. We both loved books, so I always brought him some when I visited. One day, while I was at work, William called me, which was unusual since we rarely talked outside of family gatherings. I tried to connect with him as I had with my other grandchildren, but he always seemed distant. "Grandma, are you free to talk?" "Yes, honey, any time for you." "Is everything okay?" "No." "Why are you crying? Did you get hurt? Is there anyone at home who can help you?" "Mom and Dad are here." "But do you need me to call them for you?" "No, I called you because I need your help." "What can I help you with, dear?" "I need you to save me, Grandma." "William, what do you mean?" "Don't laugh." "I'm sorry, Grandma, that wasn't what I was expecting to say. I'm not joking. If you can't help me, I'll find another way." "No, wait. I'm sorry for laughing. Now can you explain what you mean by save me?" "I need you to save me from my devil mother." "Devil mother? What do you mean?" She's not as sweet and nice as she seems. She is really mean to me when no one's around. Oh no, I hear someone coming. I have to go. Please don't tell them I called. Bye. I was confused and worried. As far as I knew, Sarah was very kind. How could William say she was a devil? I didn't believe him at first because it seemed like he might be upset with Sarah for possibly punishing him. Both Sarah and Zachary had told me William was quite a tricky child, but something inside me felt that William was serious. When I got home, I couldn't stop thinking about the call. It was strange for William to do that. I thought about it for a few days, but still felt uneasy, so I decided to buy a hidden camera. I felt bad for spying on my son's family, but I told myself I was doing it because William asked for help. If nothing was wrong, I could just take the camera back, but if something was wrong, I'd need to act. I hoped a serious talk would fix any issues. The camera arrived in a few days. Once I set it up, I could watch live and recorded footage on my phone, which was very handy. After getting everything ready and learning how to use the camera, I decided to call my son and ask if I could visit. Hello, Zach. How's everything? Everything's great, Mom. What about you? It's the usual, but I was wondering if I could come over sometime. Of course, Mom. Is everything okay? Yes, I was just thinking we haven't seen each other in a while. Maybe I could visit your place one day. Sure, Mom. How about this Sunday? That works, but should I check with Sarah first? I remember not liking it when your dad made plans without asking me. I know Sarah would be happy to have you over. Don't worry, Mom. All right then, I'll be there around 7 o'clock. That works. See you soon. Take care. Even though I had another reason for visiting, I was still excited to spend time with my son. I rarely saw my other children except during the holidays, so it was nice having one living in the same town. The weekend came quickly. I got ready early, went to the grocery store, and picked up a nice bottle of wine, and some books for William since he loved reading. When I arrived, they all welcomed me warmly. William looked so relieved to see me it made me worry again. He hadn't tried to contact me since our first phone call, so I didn't know what was on his mind. I spent the next few hours chatting with Zachary and Sarah. We had dinner and drank wine. Eventually, William went to his room since we were talking about things that probably didn't interest him. I excused myself to go talk to him. Sarah seemed a bit hesitant, but I insisted since it had been a while since I visited, and I wanted to spend time with my grandson. Zachary told Sarah to let me go and talk to William. When I entered his room, I closed the door behind me and handed him the books I had bought. We talked about the books for a while because he seemed really excited. I didn't bring up what he had mentioned earlier because I wanted him to start that conversation. Later, we talked about other things like what was happening in our lives. At one point, while he was telling me about his school, he wrote something in his notebook and showed it to me. It said, "Mom's listening. Can't talk about anything." I wasn't sure if he was serious or just worried, but I went along with it. We kept talking, and I wrote in the notebook that I had brought a hidden camera with me and asked if I could put it in his room. He looked worried but agreed quickly. I found a good spot in the room to place the camera where it could see well. I set it up, started recording, and checked my phone to make sure it was working. I stayed with William a bit longer until I told him it was getting late and I needed to go. I left my scarf behind on purpose so I would have a reason to return. After I said that, I heard quick footsteps moving away from the door, which made me wonder if William was really in trouble. I didn't think much about it at that moment and hugged William goodbye. I went downstairs, said goodbye to Zachary and Sarah, and left. Back home, I was tired that night, but checked the camera when I got home. I stayed up for an hour to read and kept an eye on the footage. The only thing that happened was my son walking into William's room and asking what we had talked about. William told him. Eventually, I fell asleep. The next morning, I was in a hurry and didn't check the cameras. I only looked at the footage after I knew William would be back from school. Again, not much happened, and I started to wonder if William might have been making it up. I decided to wait one more day, and if I didn't see anything suspicious, I planned to visit when Zachary and Sarah weren't home and ask William to return the camera. However, that night, as I watched the footage while reading, I discovered what William had been trying to tell me. I saw Sarah enter his room with a stick, followed by Zachary. I quickly unmuted the video. I listened as Sarah asked William to recount his entire day in great detail. Every time he hesitated or stuttered, she would sharply question if he was lying. If she thought he was lying, she would make him hold out his hands and hit his knuckles 2 or 4 times. I watched in horror as she hit him more and more often. William was crying, and Zachary just stood there watching. I was shocked and upset by what I saw. I had always raised my kids gently. I believe that children are smarter than we think, and they understand when things are explained to them. I couldn't understand why Zachary was just watching and letting his son be hurt over something so trivial. I wanted to rush over there and stop them, but what could I say? They would find it strange that I returned just a day after my last visit. I remembered leaving my scarf there, which I could have used as an excuse to see William again, so I picked up my phone and called Zachary. "Hey, Mom, is everything okay?" "Yes, no worries. I hope I'm not bothering you." "No, Sarah and I were just putting William to bed." "Oh, okay. I just wanted to say I think I left my scarf in William's room last night. I set it down and then forgot it. Do you think I could come by tomorrow to pick it up? Why don't I bring it over to you right now?" "No, I'm too tired and I'll probably fall asleep before you get here. I had a long day at work and can barely hold up the phone." "All right then, why don't you come by in the evening?" "I can't come then. I'm meeting some friends for game night tomorrow." "Well, Sarah and I won't be back until the evening. Why don't you come the day after? I need the scarf for tomorrow. We're having a get-together. You could come in the afternoon. William will be home." "Oh, lovely. I'll be there around 4. Good night." My heart raced as I made up excuses on the spot. At least my call had distracted Zachary and Sarah enough for them to stop focusing on William. But before they left William's room, Sarah said that William wouldn't get any dinner or any other meals until dinner. The next day, I was shocked. The next day, I took off from work and prepared myself to talk to William. I was sure he wouldn't want to continue living there, but I needed to hear it from him. Before going to Zach's house, I picked up some food for both of us. When I got there, William looked like he was about to faint. He seemed weak and hungry. Sarah really had not let him eat. I quickly gave him the food, and he ate it hungrily. I felt very sorry for him and wanted to help him. After he finished eating, I spoke to him. "Did you see everything that happened?" "Yes, darling, and I'm so sorry for laughing at you before. I had no idea." "It's okay. Mom seems so nice." "But has she always been like this?" "The beating only started recently, but she's been starving me for a while." "Why isn't Zachary doing anything?" "He's too scared of Mom. He just follows her and does whatever she says. She always gets her way." "Oh, honey, I'm so sorry you've been going through this. But why didn't you eat at school?" "Mom doesn't send me to school on the days she doesn't let me eat. I stay home. She checks how much food we have in the house. If even 1 gram of food is missing when she gets back, I get punished more. So she's starving you and messing up your schooling. I'm going to do my best to help you. Okay. I need you to tell me right now if you want to come live with me. I'll take care of everything you need and keep you away from Mom and Dad. Of course, Grandma. Anywhere away from here will be great. I promise to be good. Just please take me away from here. I promise I will, darling, but it will take some time. Do you think you can handle staying here a little while longer? Yeah, I can. I've been living here for 14 years, so I can wait a bit more. I carefully removed all the wrappers and made sure there was no trace of food. I didn't want Sarah to make things worse for William. I helped William clean up any crumbs and double-checked to make sure we left the place just as it had been. I went back home and called Zachary to let him know I had gotten my scarf back and thanked him for being cooperative. Next, I contacted a friend who works in family law. I explained my situation, and he said that fighting for custody of William would be hard and long. He also told me that even if I got custody, it might be temporary, and Sarah could change her behavior and regain custody. I knew going to court might not work in my favor with the little evidence I had, but I did have one plan. I could use the evidence to get her to make me William's legal guardian. Sarah works as a counselor at a middle school, and I was sure she wouldn't want her abusing her child to become known and risk her job and future opportunities. I kept a close watch on the footage over the next few days as I gathered all my evidence and prepared the paperwork for a transfer of guardianship. I waited until the weekend to visit Zach unannounced. When Zachary opened the door, he looked surprised. Mom, what are you doing here? I need to talk to you and Sarah. I don't think now's a good time. Why? What's going on? Just family stuff. Hold on. How come you're over so frequently, Zachary? Is it my son? I didn't think I needed special permission to do that. I didn't mean it like that, but it's just unusual. You don't usually come by so often, and this week it's been frequent, which is strange since you rarely ever drop by before. It's not really strange. I only came over today because I have something seriously important that I need to discuss with both of you. What's that sound? I had my suspicions about Sarah's behavior towards William because of how evasive Zachary had been acting. But when I suddenly heard what sounded like loud crying coming from William's room, I knew I had to act. There was no way I could just stand by when I was right there and could do something. I quickly moved past Zachary with more of a speed walk than a run due to my age and burst into William's room. There I saw William sobbing, clutching his face while Sarah stood over him, breathing heavily, her face twisted with malice. The sight made me shiver. I rushed to William's side and asked him if he was all right. He just hugged me tightly, crying into my shoulder while Sarah huffed and stormed out of the room. Once William calmed down a little, I took a good look at him. His cheek was red and swelling, his knuckles were bleeding, and there were welts on his arms, all evidence of being hit with a stick. I felt a rage like never before. What kind of monster would need to hit a child so hard? No matter what he did, nothing justified that level of harshness. I went downstairs to the kitchen, grabbed a bag of frozen vegetables, and went back up to William so he could use it to help reduce the swelling on his cheeks. Once I made sure he was somewhat okay, I told him that we would be leaving for my place immediately and asked him to pack as many of his belongings as he could. Then I walked back down to confront both Sarah and Zachary. Sarah looked furious, and Zachary seemed like he wanted to be anywhere but there. How dare you just barge into our home like that? Sarah challenged. Isn't it a good thing that I did? You were hitting your child, for crying out loud. I countered, my voice firm. What I do in my family is none of your business, she snapped back. Your child is my grandson, and he is a part of my family too. You're hurting him, and I can't let that go on. I asserted, standing my ground. He may be your grandson, but you don't live with him. You don't know how he behaves. I'm just disciplining him. Sarah defended her actions, but her justification fell flat. It doesn't matter if he's being difficult. He's a child, and there are so many other ways to handle discipline other than hitting. You, of all people, should understand. I insisted, my voice laced with both anger and disappointment. I don't believe in any of that gentle parenting stuff. Leave me and my family alone, got it? I'm afraid I can't do that. What do you mean? I handed Sarah the papers she needed to sign to transfer guardianship rights to me. Both she and Zachary stared at the paper for a long time before looking up at me, confused. I explained that they'd both needed to sign the papers, or I would show the proof I had of them hitting William. What do you mean by proof? I set up a hidden camera in William's room last week. I have all the proof I need. Neither of your jobs would be okay with what you've been doing, especially yours, Sarah. If you want to keep earning money, I suggest you sign the papers. You were spying on us? That's a huge invasion of our privacy. Don't get me wrong, but I was only acting based on what I knew. I needed to make sure William was okay. Mom, don't do this to us. Give us another chance. I'll make sure it doesn't happen again. I don't want to hear it. I'm very disappointed in you, Zachary. I raised you to be better than this. You're just as bad as Sarah, if not worse. I'm taking William with me, and I expect the papers to be signed. If you don't, you know what will happen. I knew they didn't want to risk their jobs, so they didn't fight back when William and I left. I took William out for dinner and ice cream and did my best to comfort him. I provided him with a safe place to express his feelings and just be himself without fear. In the weeks that followed, I was granted legal guardianship of William. Sarah and Zachary said they planned to move to a different state and didn't want to disrupt William's schooling as a reason for the guardianship transfer. They did end up moving, which was a big relief for me. William is doing much better now and seems a lot happier. Knowing he won't see his parents for a long time has helped him feel safer. He's one of the kindest and sweetest kids I know. He thanks me every day for what I did for him, and I intend to keep my promise to always protect him for the rest of my life. Thank you for listening. I am craving a vacay with my friends, and I intend to charge it all with your credit card. I hadn't heard from Gary in a while when all of this hit the fan. I knew he had been coming home late for a while. It was nothing. WebServlet gets server name in braces. Secretly talking to Deborah on the phone, he was also jumpy at home. I wondered if he had been preparing for this all along. I wonder if Gary and Deborah might have a hand in this. The good news is I was prepared for anything. I might pretend to be shocked when he brings it up. What do you mean? I asked for clarification. I already knew Gary was planning to leave for a trip today. Honestly, it's hard to believe if he thinks he can deceive me. I wish he had made a better plan. I had been patient up until today, but now I felt a strong desire to retaliate. There's no way I didn't have a plan for revenge. It's time to stand up to those annoying siblings. After being patient for so long, I'm sure everything will become clear after today. I hope they enjoy their trip, not knowing that one of their travel companions is working with me. My name is Elizabeth Fleo, and I'm 31 years old. I live in a house with my husband, Gary. Right after finishing high school, I started working at the company I'm still with today. After gaining some experience and being recommended by my boss, I earned several certifications in this company. Certifications and a solid track record mean you're valued highly. I got a leadership position at the age of 19, which was quite young for such a role. Even though it was just a lead position, I secretly hoped to become at least a department head one day. After a while, a few new employees joined the company, including Gary. Even though I'm younger than him, I hold a higher position at work. "Elizabeth, you're about the same age as us, aren't you?" he asked. "And you're already a supervisor. That's impressive." "Yes, I'm probably a year younger or so," I replied. "I've been working here since I left high school, so I've gathered quite a bit of experience." Gary often praised my early career planning, which was flattering. Eventually, he began showing interest in me, and although I was hesitant at first, I found myself falling for him. Our relationship developed in a typical fashion, enjoying dinners out and drives until we decided to move in together. Living with Gary, I noticed his untidy habits, but thought it was his way of being comfortable around me, so I didn't fuss over it. After some time, Gary proposed and I accepted. We then started to plan our future together. Gary suggested, "I'd like you to quit your job and stay at home. I'll work and you can take care of the house. We should also start thinking about having kids soon, and I'm eager to buy a house and plan our wedding. How about we go to a wedding, a house, then kid? What do you think?" "Gary, your plan sounds nice, and I'm not too concerned about the order, but we need to think about our finances," I responded. "I don't intend to leave my job, even with kids in the picture. We should be flexible. Buying a house might put a strain on our budget." "I understand," he said, "but it bothers me that you earn more. I was hoping we could get a house right after the wedding. That might be difficult given our financial situation. Let's focus on managing the wedding and house for now and consider children later. We'll decide on my job then, all right." "Let's do that," Gary agreed. Inwardly, I didn't want to quit my job, but I felt I had to propose this compromise to keep the peace. At our engagement party, I met Gary's family, but his sister Deborah was away and only attended the wedding. She barged into the bride and groom's room, looked me over, smirked, and remarked, "So, Gary chose you. A bit plain compared to his exes, huh? I'm Deborah, your sister-in-law. I'm someone who's straightforward with family, so just a heads up. I'm Elizabeth, nice to meet you," I said, introducing myself. Deborah gave a casual wave and exited the room, leaving me quite surprised by her blunt demeanor. It was clear from the start that my sister-in-law was a character all her own. Later, I met Deborah's husband, who seemed like a genuinely nice person. The wedding ceremony went smoothly, and Gary and I eventually purchased a house we both loved. With life getting busier, I dedicated more effort to my job. One day, when I was busy, the doorbell rang. Gary went to answer it and returned, laughing and chatting with Deborah, who had decided to visit unexpectedly. "Hey there, Elizabeth. Gary's doing pretty well, huh? Owning such a big house, that's good for him, being my little brother and all," Deborah remarked, making herself comfortable. "Elizabeth, do we have any snacks or something?" "My sister's here, so let's be quick," Gary urged, his tone off-putting. I sensed a change in Gary's attitude. He seemed to puff himself up in front of his sister, likely implying he was solely responsible for buying our house. Although I contributed to the down payment and mortgage, Gary insisted on having the house titled in his name. At the time, it seemed inconsequential whose name was on the deed, but his portrayal of the situation to Deborah bothered me. Nevertheless, I chose to keep the peace and not stir up trouble. "Here are some snacks. Gary really puts in a lot of effort, you know," I mentioned. "Why does Elizabeth sound so authoritative?" "She's not the boss or anything," Deborah commented. "Well, actually, I am Gary's supervisor at work," I corrected her. "Oh, is that so?" I might not have mentioned that Elizabeth was already a manager when I started. She's been working since she dropped out of high school, so it makes sense. Gary chimed in, somewhat dismissively. Wait, you dropped out of high school? You seem so dedicated, yet you're less accomplished than me, Deborah provocatively said. Is there an issue with me dropping out of high school? I asked. Not really, but Elizabeth, since you didn't graduate from high school, and I'm your sister-in-law, I guess I can ask you for anything, right? Deborah suggested, misinterpreting the dynamics. That's true, Gary agreed, emboldening Deborah's stance. Elizabeth, whatever my sister says goes. If you don't agree, I'll have to ask you to leave the house, Gary threatened, escalating the situation unnecessarily. The conversation with my sister-in-law and her brother left me baffled. Why would Deborah think she could demand anything from me just because I didn't finish high school and she's related by marriage? And the threat of being kicked out over it sounded absurd. Was this some kind of joke? I managed a polite smile and made my escape to the kitchen, but I could still catch Gary's voice indicating they were serious about their strange assertion. Soon after, Deborah followed me into the kitchen with a request. Hey, Elizabeth, I need a favor. Can I borrow about $5,000? That's quite a bit of money. What do you need it for? I asked, surprised by the boldness of her request. It's just $5,000. You have a good job, right? I needed to finish paying off some renovation costs, she replied, as if it wasn't a significant amount. But didn't you just show off your new condo? I questioned. Deborah brushed off my query and insisted, saying Gary had agreed to lend her the money and directed her to me. Why would Gary promise something like that without discussing it with me first? I wondered aloud. Deborah then threatened to mess with my job unless I complied. Fine, I'll lend you the money, but we're making a promissory note for it and bring an ID with a photo when you come to get the cash, I stipulated, wanting to ensure I had a written agreement. Deborah begrudgingly agreed, showing up the next day with the required identification. Despite her complaints, I knew having a promissory note was crucial. This whole ordeal was eye-opening regarding how much Gary was influenced by Deborah. It seemed like standing up to her wouldn't have made any difference. Later, I discovered Deborah spent the borrowed money on luxury items. After the initial loan, she became more brazen, borrowing up to $112,000 in total. Each time, I insisted on a promissory note. Just when the situation seemed to spiral, I was called into the boss's office. Not for a reprimand, but for a surprise promotion from supervisor to manager. I was absolutely thrilled, rushing home to share my big news with Gary, who had taken the day off. I burst through the door. I'm home, G. Guess what? Welcome back, Elizabeth. You look really happy. What's up? He greeted me. I just had a meeting with my boss, and you won't believe it. He offered me the position of department manager. I've always dreamed of climbing up to head manager, so this step is huge for me. Wait, what? You're getting promoted? Gary's confusion was palpable. Did you accept? Of course I did. Haven't I mentioned my ambitions to you before? His reaction took me by surprise. You think I should have asked for your permission. But you know I've always wanted to keep my career. And as for not being promoted yourself, that's something for you to address. Shortly after, Gary made a call, presumably to his sister, because she showed up not long after. So you think you can just snatch Gary's chance at a promotion? She accused. I haven't snatched anything. Promotions at our workplace are merit-based, I explained. But she retorted, suggesting I was belittling Gary. Before I knew it, they had taken my bank card from my purse. Despite my attempts to stop them, I was outnumbered and could only watch as they left, laughing. Left alone, tears started to form. Regret filled me. I should have seen the warning signs. It was clear what I needed to do next: find a reputable divorce attorney. Gary didn't come home that night. At work the next day, he approached. I sought legal advice over the weekend and in the weeks that followed. I started the divorce proceedings. Gary's behavior didn't change. He kept coming home late and rushed out whenever he had a day off. Just as I considered hiring a detective, I received a call from Scott, Deborah's husband. "Hi, is this Elizabeth?" he asked. "Yes, this is her. It's unusual to hear from you, Scott." I was wondering, is Deborah there? "No, she's not." "Why do you ask?" "She's been returning late and leaving early on weekends, claiming she's at Gary's." I was just checking. "That's odd. Gary's been acting similarly. Honestly, I stopped caring about what they do." I confessed, feeling detached from the situation. Scott seemed concerned. "I've had enough too. I've thought about divorce but haven't been able to go through with it." I shared my story with Scott about the money I lent Deborah and everything else. He expressed sympathy and mentioned he was close to his breaking point with Deborah. "Scott, maybe we should use what's happened as evidence. It sounds like we're both in unfair situations. Let's take a stand against their selfish behavior," I suggested, hoping to empower both of us to act. Scott agreed, and we discussed collaborating on our respective divorces. He then mentioned something odd about Deborah, urging him to take a long vacation, and I recalled seeing travel brochures and club cards in a shelf Gary was secretive about. After finding these items, it dawned on me they were likely planning a trip together. "Scott, it looks like they might be planning a getaway. I just found travel brochures and some club cards in a place Gary told me never to look." I informed him, piecing together their probable plans. Discovering some travel brochures sparked an idea in me. I shared my plan with Scott over the phone, and he laughed, agreeing to join in. We decided to coordinate our actions via text messages and concluded our conversation. I also sent him some potential evidence that might help with his divorce, and we carefully planned our next moves. 2 weeks later, on a day pre-informed by Scott, Gary left the house early in the morning. A few hours after his departure, he called me, boasting about having a blast with his sister and friends on my account. His recent pattern of late returns and secretive phone calls with Deborah had already raised my suspicions. I decided to feign ignorance to see how far he would go. "Your card. What are you talking about?" I played along, confused. "You seriously didn't notice? We've been planning this trip for a while. Scott was our backup. You've become too proud, and we thought it's time to teach you a lesson," Gary retorted, confident in his scheme. His words left me emotionless, my patience replaced by a resolve for retribution. "What was that about my debit card earlier?" I inquired. "I have my card here," I stated, pretending to be confused. "That's impossible." "Here's the card." "Wait, what?" Gary stammered, realizing something was wrong. "That's a fitness club membership card, Gary. Did you mix them up?" I couldn't help but reveal the trick. Scott, listening in on speakerphone, chimed in. "So it was a plan concocted by Deborah and you. I'm utterly disappointed." "Actually, I switched the card last night," I confessed. "Looks like you didn't double-check this morning and just assumed." Gary, caught in his own trap, sputtered in disbelief. "What are you playing at?" "I should be asking you that," I shot back. "Don't get too smug just because you think you can outsmart us." Gary's failed attempt at using my supposed debit card, only to find out it was a fitness club card, marked a turning point. His plan, fueled by arrogance and the belief in an easy victory over me, crumbled. This incident, a minor victory in the grand scheme of things, was a reminder of the importance of staying vigilant and prepared, especially against those who underestimate your resolve. I had a little surprise in store for Gary and Deborah upon their return. "I've got gifts waiting for both of you when you get back," I teased, knowing full well the twist I had planned. "You think gifts will make up for this?" "I only want cash," Gary retorted, thinking he could sway me with demands. "We'll see," I said, adding a touch of mystery to my voice. "Look forward to it." Ignoring their subsequent request for money, I ended the call and went to sleep, brushing off Gary's threatening message with a simple, "Is that so?" The next afternoon, my phone was bombarded with missed calls and messages. I first reassured Scott, then tackled Gary's relentless pleas for money. "It's freezing here. We're in Ketchikan of all places in March. Help." Their discomfort was a clear sign my plan had succeeded. "You were counting on Scott, weren't you?" "Too bad he's on his way back here, not stuck in Ketchikan with you," I replied. Confusion and desperation seeped through Gary's response. "What do you mean Scott's not here?" "Exactly," I confirmed. "While you were busy plotting with Deborah, Scott and I joined forces. He's already boarded a plane back." The revelation left them stunned. I ended the call with a clear message. "Now find your own way back. See you." I then prepared for the inevitable confrontation upon their return, organizing a final meeting with my lawyer to discuss the divorce. I anticipated Gary and his group's outrage, ready to face them with calm determination. As expected, upon their return, Gary and his friends stormed in, demanding explanations and threatening me with eviction. But when Scott, usually the peacemaker, raised his voice, commanding them to sit down, they were taken aback. This unexpected assertiveness from Scott marked a turning point, establishing a new dynamic that would shape our next steps. The lawyer wasted no time in distributing his business cards to Gary and Deborah, who appeared utterly bewildered by the gesture. "Well, here's a special gift from us," Scott and I announced, presenting them with a stack of documents. Their confusion turned to shock as they skimmed the papers. "Wait, this is about dividing property. You're not suggesting divorce, are you?" Gary stammered, disbelief written all over his face. "It's exactly that, a divorce," I clarified as their faces drained of color. "This has to be a joke, right?" Deborah attempted a laugh, looking for support from Scott, who was already heading towards the door. "I've documented everything, including the call Gary made from their so-called vacation," Scott revealed, his tone serious. "It's beyond clear what you've done, and I cannot go on like this." Both Gary and Deborah tried to protest, but their attempts were feeble and unconvincing. "I'm entitled to half of the down payment. We made the remainder of the mortgage and the reimbursement of the savings you squandered from my single days," I stated firmly. Deborah tried to deny borrowing money or accessing my savings, but her denial crumbled when I mentioned the promissory note. Their desperate attempt to destroy evidence by crushing the recorder and Deborah ripping up the document was met with calm responses from Scott and me, explaining the futility of their actions. "Even if you destroy that recorder, the data is still safe on my computer. And Deborah, that wasn't the original document you tore up," I said, revealing their short-sightedness. The claims we laid out were substantial. Gary was billed for $125,000, covering emotional damages, the down payment on the house, and miscellaneous expenses, with an additional loan repayment due. Deborah faced a bill of $26,000, including the loan she acknowledged with a promissory note and miscellaneous expenses. Scott's claim against Deborah was even more significant, amounting to $110,000 for the distress she caused him and her reckless spending, all without touching assets like condos. As reality sank in, Gary and Deborah could do nothing but cry, realizing the gravity of their situation and the consequences of their actions. This wasn't just a threat. It was a firm stance against their irresponsible and selfish behavior, marking a turning point for all of us. I suspected that Gary and Deborah might consider suing, given their history of rash decisions, but our sharp attorney had cleverly included a clause in the settlement documents essentially saying, "If you try to sue, you'll definitely lose. No lawyer will take your case, and you'll only end up spending more money. Focus on repaying your debts instead." This tactic ensured we could resolve everything without stepping into a courtroom. After settling the matter, I collected my things and left our shared home behind. Surprisingly, news of the ordeal spread through my workplace, leading to Gary being transferred to a different branch, a move that likely saved both of us from further awkward encounters. Not long after, Gary reached out with a message that was both desperate and hopeful, suggesting we try to mend our relationship and insisting he had changed. Similarly, Deborah tried to persuade me to reconsider, hinting at the possibility of living together, as if that could magically resolve the deep-seated issues between us. Their pleas fell on deaf ears. I had made up my mind, firm in my decision. I blocked them, cutting off any chance for them to sway me. Scott, who'd become a friend and confidant through this ordeal, shared that he too had received and ignored similar pleas from Deborah. One day, a drive past my old house revealed it was on the market, a clear sign that Gary and Deborah had managed to make the repayment. Since I had blocked all communication with them, their current situation remained a mystery to me. In the meantime, I moved on with my life, purchasing a condo and diving into my work, which soon paid off with a promotion to regional director, a goal I had long aspired to achieve. Scott and I began to spend more time together, discovering a surprising ease and compatibility in our interactions. Something about our dynamic just felt right, hinting at a budding relationship that was different from anything I had experienced before. Life after the divorce unfolded beautifully, affirming my decision to leave a toxic situation behind. As for what developed between Scott and me, that's a story for another chapter, one filled with promise and new beginnings. My name is Ava, and I am a 50-year-old who works part-time. My husband and I are parents to 3 teenage boys. One a senior and the other a sophomore in high school. Our elder son is currently preparing for his college entrance exams with a dream of becoming a lawyer, a passion he's nurtured since he was very young. This aspiration likely comes from admiring my brother Timothy, a successful lawyer who established his own law firm a few years back. Timothy's dedication to his profession and his ability to inspire others, especially my son, has been a guiding light in our family. Despite being excellent in his studies from a young age, my son's ambition to pursue law intensified because of the encouragement and example set by Timothy. Whenever they meet, my son expresses his determination to become a lawyer, much to Timothy's delight and supportive chuckles. Timothy, who is childless and married to a woman 8 years his junior, enjoys spoiling my sons whenever he visits, creating a warm and encouraging environment for them to grow up in. Despite Timothy's wife being somewhat of an enigma to us, she's known for her eccentric personality and rarely visits our home. We've had minimal interaction with her. Timothy and I, having lost our parents early in life, have always had a close bond. He played a parental role in my life, especially during significant events like my wedding. My husband and I were initially relieved to hear of Timothy's engagement, hoping it would bring him happiness. However, our first meeting with his fiancée left us puzzled due to her seemingly unhappy demeanor, contrary to our expectations of seeing a joyous bride-to-be. On another note, my husband possesses a substantial fortune estimated at $50 million, including our home, which will be inherited by me in the absence of any children from our marriage. This fact seems to have caused some tension, or at least a noticeable change in how my sister-in-law interacts with us. Although she has always been somewhat distant and difficult to communicate with, this complex web of family relationships, aspirations, and the dynamics of inheritance paints a picture of our lives filled with both ambition and the peculiar challenges that come with interpersonal relationships within a family. In the presence of my brother and his fiancée, I commented on how wonderful they seemed together, a gesture of goodwill and support on what was a significant moment for them. However, once back in the privacy of my home with my husband, I felt free to express the doubts that lingered in my mind. I couldn't help but wonder why my brother's fiancée appeared so markedly unhappy, especially now that their marriage was official. My husband shared my concerns, echoing my sentiments with a note of worry. He remarked on her lack of joyfulness, a quality one might expect in someone just married. My brother, a successful lawyer with his own firm, had recently purchased a house, prompting a visit from our family to celebrate the new milestone. The house was as impressive as I had anticipated, a testament to my brother's achievement. Yet during our visit, the absence of my sister-in-law was palpable. My husband, ever the joker, teased my brother about his wife's absence, asking if she had left him already. The joke, intended to be lighthearted, fell flat as we observed my brother's somber reaction. He explained that his wife often returned to her parents' home for various reasons, and on this occasion, it was to celebrate her mother's birthday. The mood shifted unexpectedly when my brother, with a seriousness that was uncharacteristic, inquired if we would consider allowing him to adopt one of our children should he and his wife be unable to have their own. The question was so sudden and so grave that I found myself speechless, unable to process the request. My husband, perhaps in an attempt to diffuse the tension, responded with laughter, suggesting that such decisions could be discussed in the future. His casual dismissal did not ease my concerns. Instead, I found myself preoccupied with thoughts of what this meant for my brother's marriage and the well-being of his relationship with his wife. Over the years, the absence of my sister-in-law from family gatherings became a norm to the extent that her existence seemed almost an afterthought. Conversations about her or inquiries into her well-being were carefully avoided, creating an unspoken agreement not to broach what was clearly a sensitive subject. This delicate balance was maintained until a recent celebration in honor of my eldest son's acceptance into his dream law school, during which my brother revisited the subject of adoption. This reiteration brought back all the complexities and unspoken worries that had been simmering beneath the surface of our family's interactions. The juxtaposition of my family's life, marked by milestones and celebrations, against the backdrop of my brother's unspoken struggles, painted a complex picture of familial bonds and the silent worries that often go unaddressed. Despite the joy of my son's achievement, my brother's situation reminded me of the nuanced and sometimes hidden challenges that family members face, leaving me to ponder the best way to support those we love while respecting the boundaries they set. My brother revisited a significant request with us, inquiring if we would consider allowing him to adopt one of our children. This conversation emerged from a place of need and hope, as he and his wife were unable to conceive. The question wasn't new to us. He had broached the subject previously shortly after his marriage. But the context had changed, and the urgency in his tone was palpable this time. Despite the gravity of the situation, my husband responded with a light-hearted suggestion, proposing our eldest son, who shared my brother's ambition in law, as a potential candidate. His casual demeanor belied the complexity and the enormity of the decision at hand, a decision that would undeniably alter the course of our sons' lives. Given that the prospective adoptive parent would be their uncle, the familial bond reassured me somewhat about their emotional well-being. However, my apprehensions concerning my sister-in-law's treatment towards my children, who would not be her biological offspring, lingered. Seeking clarity and assurance, I questioned my brother about his wife's stance on the adoption. His response, accompanied by a strained smile, was meant to allay my fears. He confirmed that the matter had been discussed and agreed upon between them, offering a semblance of relief. Yet the decision was too significant to be made hastily. I resolved to engage my sons in this conversation, considering they were of high school age and capable of understanding the implications of such a life-altering choice. The matter was left to be deliberated further with no immediate conclusions drawn. However, the situation took an unexpected turn a few days later when I received a distressing call from my brother's law firm informing me of his sudden collapse due to a stroke. Upon arriving at the hospital, I was greeted by his colleagues, whose faces were etched with concern. They informed me that they had been unable to contact my sister-in-law. Attempts to reach her through the landline were futile, and without her mobile number, I felt at a loss. It wasn't until my husband and younger son joined me that we discovered a smartphone among my brother's personal effects, which provided us with the means to contact her. The call was initially met with hostility, as she mistook me for someone else and threatened legal action. It was only when I identified myself and explained the circumstances of my brother's hospitalization that her demeanor shifted from aggressive to apologetic. Yet her reaction to the news of my brother's condition struck me as peculiarly upbeat, a reaction that seemed incongruous with the gravity of the situation. This interaction added another layer of complexity to my already conflicted feelings about the proposed adoption and the dynamics within my brother's family. The incident underscored the delicate nature of family relationships and the unforeseen challenges that often accompany them, leaving me to navigate these turbulent waters with great care and consideration for all involved. When I reached out to my sister-in-law to inform her about my brother's hospitalization, her response was chillingly indifferent. She claimed she was too busy to visit the hospital and requested to be updated on any developments, abruptly ending the call. This reaction left me perplexed and slightly dismayed, questioning what could possibly be more pressing than her husband's critical health situation. It became evident that we couldn't count on her support, compelling us to take matters into our own hands regarding my brother's care. In the days following, my family and I rallied to provide the support my brother needed. My eldest son, having recently completed his university entrance exams and enjoying a period of relaxation, took it upon himself to visit my brother daily, acting as our family's representative. Despite our hopes and prayers, my brother remained in a critical, unconscious state with no signs of improvement. Throughout this entire ordeal, my sister-in-law remained conspicuously absent. She neither visited nor inquired about his condition. Approximately a week after my brother was admitted to the hospital, I initiated another call to my sister-in-law, hoping for a change in her attitude. However, her response was as shocking as it was heartless. She answered the phone with a tone of gleeful anticipation, asking, "What's the matter? Did he die?" Her blatant insensitivity and lack of empathy were staggering. When I questioned her absence at the hospital, she retorted dismissively, claiming her presence would make no difference to my brother's condition. Her indifference infuriated me to such an extent that I ended the call, feeling both enraged and helpless. This series of interactions led me to reflect on my brother's earlier proposal to adopt one of my sons. It dawned on me that perhaps his suggestion was rooted in a deep-seated concern for his legacy and a recognition of the strained dynamics within his own marriage. Their union, brokered by a marriage counseling agency, now appeared to me in a different light. I speculated whether my sister-in-law's motivations for marrying my brother were influenced more by his profession and financial stability than by love or companionship. This realization only added to my growing resentment towards her. Discussing these developments with my husband, he presented a bleak but realistic perspective. Should anything happen to my brother, his wife would stand to inherit everything, given the absence of any children. This stark reality brought new weight to my brother's interest in adoption, suggesting it might have been a contemplative step towards securing his legacy and ensuring his assets remained within the family. When I broached the subject of adoption with my sons, their reactions were unexpectedly varied. My younger son, devoid of any immediate aspirations or goals, surprisingly expressed willingness to be adopted, perceiving it as an opportunity for an easier life under the care of my brother. This stood in stark contrast to my older son, whom I had assumed would be more inclined towards the idea, especially considering his admiration for my brother. This divergence in their responses left me contemplating the complexities of family dynamics, the impact of legacy, and the unforeseen consequences of our choices on the bonds that hold us together. My oldest son didn't want to be adopted because he felt it was his duty to take care of us, his parents. I was happy to hear this, but also felt that he would have been the perfect choice for adoption by my brother, who was a lawyer and needed someone to continue his legacy. Unfortunately, I couldn't go through with the adoption since my brother was unconscious, and I didn't want his wealth. I definitely didn't want his property going to my sister-in-law, who seemed to be waiting for him to pass away. Sadly, my brother never got better and passed away a few days later. I had to call my sister-in-law to discuss the funeral arrangements. Her response was cold. She said she didn't want to be involved in any way and hung up quickly. My husband and I, with help from the law firm staff, organized the funeral despite the firm's uncertain future. We learned my brother had made arrangements for its continued operation. The funeral showed how respected my brother was, with many people from various fields attending and sending flowers. This made us realize once again how great he was. My younger son felt regret for not being adopted, especially seeing the influential people who came to pay their respects. He didn't realize how amazing his uncle was. I was a pallbearer at the funeral, but nobody asked why my sister-in-law wasn't there, and her absence went unmentioned. It seemed like we were the only ones who knew about their marriage. They had skipped a wedding ceremony and went straight to their honeymoon, which might be why even some relatives were unaware. After the funeral, we invited everyone to my brother's house to thank them and share a meal. Just as we were reflecting on our loss, my sister-in-law showed up in a bright pink coat, drawing attention. It was a difficult time filled with mixed emotions, from pride in my brother's accomplishments to sadness over his passing and frustration with the unresolved issues he left behind. When my sister-in-law arrived at the end of the funeral, she announced loudly that she would inherit my brother's $50 million estate and house, as they had no children. Her declaration was met with laughter from my brother's coworkers, confusing everyone. She demanded to know why they were laughing, calling them rude. One lawyer then revealed that she and my brother were officially divorced, and that the divorce settlement had been finalized the day before he fell ill. This news shocked everyone, especially when it became clear she was expecting to inherit despite the divorce. As the discussion unfolded, it was revealed that she was supposed to pay alimony because her affair had caused the divorce. She protested, claiming she had no one to pay alimony to, but the lawyers corrected her, stating that as my brother's sole inheritor, I would be the one to receive it. It was a moment of realization for me and her. The rules of inheritance were not in her favor. She tried to argue that she should still get half of the estate now that the divorce was settled. However, a lawyer pointed out that my brother had already compensated her during the divorce, and that the house, purchased before their marriage, was not subject to division. Despite her attempts to assert herself, mentioning a life insurance policy she thought she was still the beneficiary of, a lawyer quickly noted that my brother, being cautious, likely changed the beneficiary after the divorce. Her attempt to secure a position of advantage amidst a crowd that was clearly not on her side was bold yet ultimately futile, as legal facts and my brother's foresight protected his assets from being claimed under false pretenses. When I stumbled upon my brother's life insurance policy among his important documents, a moment of tension arose as my sister-in-law snatched it from my hands to eagerly verify the beneficiary's name. Her anticipation quickly dissolved into disappointment when it became clear that the policy named me, not her, as the beneficiary. In a burst of frustration, she vented her true feelings, lamenting her marriage to my brother under the mistaken belief of his wealth, and now facing the reality of receiving minimal financial benefits and the obligation of paying alimony. It was a confession of regret and disillusionment. In response, one of my brother's lawyers present during this exchange remarked that my brother had expressed similar sentiments about his decision to follow a marriage counselor's advice, viewing it as a grave error. This was a perspective my brother had never shared with me directly, but had openly discussed with his colleagues, revealing a side of his thoughts and feelings I had not been privy to. Following the revelation of her unsuccessful attempt to secure a fortune through the marriage, my sister-in-law found herself in a precarious financial situation, obliged to fulfill the alimony payments in installments. Without a steady income, she desperately sought employment. However, her lack of work experience and commitment quickly led her to abandon the job market. Reverting to her previous strategy, she registered again with a marriage counseling agency, aiming to entrap another wealthy individual. Unfortunately for her, her scheme was short-lived. The man she targeted detected her deceit and took legal action, leading to her arrest for attempting marriage fraud. This incident came to light when I inquired about the alimony payments that had never commenced. The lawyer from my brother's firm informed me of her arrest and the unlikely prospect of recovering any alimony in the foreseeable future. While the financial aspect of the alimony was of little concern to me, the principle of the matter was paramount. I harbored no interest in the money itself, but rather in seeing justice served for her exploitation of my brother's intentions and legacy. I wished for a thorough investigation into her actions, hoping that any other fraudulent activities would be uncovered and adequately addressed in court. In the wake of these events, my family and I transitioned into a new phase of our lives, moving into the spacious house my brother had left behind. This significant inheritance transformed our living situation, moving us from an apartment to a residence that offered more than just physical space. It represented a legacy and a foundation for the future. My eldest son, inspired by the legal wranglings he witnessed and motivated by a desire to uphold his uncle's legacy, dedicated himself to his law studies with renewed vigor and aspiration. He saw in his uncle's colleagues a model for the type of lawyer he aspired to become, one committed to justice and integrity. However, amidst the family's collective uplift from the inheritance, my younger son harbored feelings of disappointment, half-jokingly expressing a wish that he had been the one adopted by our uncle, thereby positioning himself as the direct inheritor of the estate. His comment, tinged with jest, nonetheless revealed an undercurrent of regret and what-if scenarios that lingered in his mind, a reflection of the complex emotions and dynamics that the legacy and its aftermath had stirred within our family. From this point forward, we're going to take charge of the house ourselves. You'll need to look for a new place to live. My brother and his wife, with my mother's backing, are insisting I leave, viewing me as a hindrance. It's bewildering that they overlook the fact I've been footing the bill for our living expenses. Their lack of appreciation and respect astounds me. In response, I've resolved to take matters into my own hands. My name is Helen, and I'm a 35-year-old woman who moved back in with my parents after college. Venturing out into the world proved more challenging than expected. Initially, I looked for jobs while receiving unemployment benefits. Then I discovered the world of remote work and carved out a niche for myself as a freelance engineer, leveraging my background in science. Starting with smaller tasks, I managed to earn a modest income, but more importantly, I gathered valuable experience. Working from home not only suited me financially, but also helped me avoid overwhelming social interactions, boosting my self-esteem. Gradually, I took on bigger projects, and my earnings increased to match those of a typical corporate employee. However, my parents, particularly my mother who holds traditional views, struggled to comprehend my unconventional work arrangement. Despite my efforts to explain, my mother remained skeptical, fearing what she couldn't understand. My father seemed to get it, but my mother couldn't shake her concerns, often questioning the sustainability of my job. She couldn't grasp the concept, no matter how much I tried to reassure her of my professional commitment. She would express concerns about me staying home too long, mistaking my career choice for a mere phase or a consequence of mental health issues. Despite it having been over 3 years, her inability to understand extended to questioning the legitimacy of my online work, even suggesting that it might be something illicit or tied to peculiar beliefs. Despite showing her emails from clients and my income statements, she remained unconvinced, failing to recognize the legitimacy and potential of my career path. This misunderstanding and lack of support within my family have led to a pivotal moment where I must assert my independence and navigate my own way forward. I shared with my mom how I received consistent payments from my job, trying to assure her of its reliability, but she remained unconvinced, plagued by worries that I might be living off unemployment benefits. The thought of moving out on my own had crossed my mind, yet I hadn't managed to save enough money for such a step. Around the same time, my dad's health took a turn for the worse, requiring nursing care after an early retirement that led to a decrease in our family's income. When I voiced my concerns, he comforted me, saying, "Oh, Helen, I have my pension. We manage." Given my mother's tendency to overspend, I couldn't help but question, "Are you sure we can make ends meet?" Nonetheless, we had to make do with what we had, our savings seeing my dad weary, possibly anxious about what lay ahead weighed on me. He had always been there for me, supporting me through college and my return home due to mental health challenges. Leaving him in such a situation seemed unthinkable. My mom, too, was taken aback by my dad's sudden health issues. Wanting to give back and support my family, I decided to stay. "Don't worry, Dad. I've got this," I assured him. His surprised response, "Really? But can you really afford to?" pushed me to show him my bank account details, proving my financial stability. "Dad, I didn't realize you were doing so well," he admitted upon seeing my earnings. "Could you help out then?" "Of course," I replied. "You supported me through so much. It's my turn to support us." This pledge led me to take on the household's financial responsibilities, covering everything from my father's medical expenses to daily living costs. I began transferring a set amount monthly to help with our expenses, and I created a new main credit card for my mom, adding her as an additional user since she previously relied on my dad's card. Both my dad and I tried to save as much as we could, encouraging my mom to do the same. Despite my efforts, my mom remained skeptical of my contribution and even suggested I should move out. My dad, recognizing the significance of my financial support, argued that without me, they'd face even greater difficulties. Reluctantly, my mom agreed to let me stay. While I continued my work and contributed at home, my mom took my help for granted and imposed stricter demands. "Can't you finish your chores faster?" she would ask. "Sorry, it's tough managing work and household tasks," I replied. She often doubted the difficulty of balancing both, leading to a growing strain in our relationship. My dad, however, understood and appreciated my contributions. We managed to maintain this arrangement for a year until, unfortunately, my dad's health declined further, requiring hospitalization. Every day, I made sure to visit my dad in the hospital. "Hey, Dad, how are you feeling today?" I'd ask. "Thank you, Helen. I'm not seeing much improvement, but I'm more concerned about how this is affecting you," he'd respond. I reassured him, "Don't worry about me. Looking after you is not a burden. But I've noticed things with Mom have been tense since you've been hospitalized." Living with my mom had become increasingly difficult, almost suffocating. Yet my desire to support both of my parents never waned. I fondly remembered the days when she would carefully prepare my lunches and dinners during my school years. However, my feelings began to shift when my brother James and his wife Sarah showed up unannounced one day, apparently invited by my mom without my knowledge. James made it clear, "We're going to be staying here now." I was taken aback and questioned this sudden decision. He explained, "Mom's worried about you managing on your own while Dad's in the hospital." I looked to my mom for answers, but she avoided my gaze. James tried to reassure me, "We're here to support you, Helen." However, Sarah's smirk hinted at an underlying tension. My mom then added, "Thank you both. Helen, you'll need to pull your weight, or living here could become difficult for you." Their sudden presence in our home marked the beginning of a challenging new chapter. Despite my brother's successful career and presumed financial stability, the dynamics at home became strained. My sister-in-law's demands, such as waking me up early to make breakfast, clashed with my work schedule. As someone who thrives in the early hours, these interruptions were particularly frustrating. "I'm already working," I protested, but she insisted. "Then hurry up and get breakfast ready." Must I do everything myself? Our family mornings used to be laid back, with each of us eating whenever and whatever we preferred. I had assumed that with my mother and sister-in-law at home, preparing breakfast would naturally fall to them. Yet my sister-in-law believed in shared responsibilities, pushing me to contribute. Reluctantly, I helped with breakfast, but my efforts seemed never to satisfy them. I had prepared a thoughtful meal of soft scrambled eggs, a lettuce salad, buttered toast, and a juicy sausage. A perfectly respectable breakfast, I believed, but their expectations were evidently much higher, adding to the growing tension within our household. Feeling a mix of frustration and disbelief, I responded to their complaints about breakfast. "If you don't like it, you don't have to eat it." They were visibly taken aback by my reaction. "What kind of attitude is that? Who do you think you are? It's not right for you not to help out more around the house," they criticized. "But I also have work," I tried to explain, only to be met with skepticism. "Work? Really? What kind of work do you call that?" "It sounds ridiculous," my brother and his wife rebuked, their words sharp and dismissive. Influenced by my mother, my brother had always had a tendency to belittle me and my efforts. Despite their attitudes, I knew the value of my work. Without another word, I gathered my belongings, including my laptop, and left the house, ignoring my brother's calls after me. I headed directly to my dad's hospital room. Upon seeing my rushed entrance, he asked, "Helen, what's wrong? You look upset." After I shared what happened, he was taken aback. I had no idea things had gotten that bad at home. "I'm sorry, Helen. Remember, you can choose your own path in life. Feeling somewhat adrift, I reflected on how my mother seemed to prefer James's presence at home. My dad offered comforting words. You don't have to stay in a place where you feel unwelcome. I want you to be happy. Live your life the way you see fit. His words bolstered my resolve to find a new living situation. Returning home that evening, I walked into a stern atmosphere. My mother, brother, and sister-in-law awaited with serious expressions. "Where have you been all day?" my brother demanded. "I thought you were at work." "I took the day off because of you," he claimed, which surprised me. Taking a day off so abruptly seemed quite irresponsible to me. As the confrontation escalated, my brother and his wife made their stance clear. "Get out," my brother stated. "Why?" I asked, confused. "From now on, the two of us will live here. If you're not willing to fit in, you should leave." "We don't need your help," they insisted, attempting to push me out of my own home. "That's enough, Helen. You don't need to be here, especially now that your father isn't at home," my mother added, siding with them. It seems they all viewed me more as a nuisance than a contributing member of the family. Did my mother not realize the extent of my financial contributions, even as she indulged in her monthly splurges on luxury items? I wondered how she would manage once her allowance from me stopped. Their disregard for my contributions and their decision to oust me from the house made it clear that it was time for me to carve out my own space away from the familial tension and misunderstandings. My frustration reached its peak. Despite numerous attempts to explain my situation, my mother, brother, and sister-in-law continued to disregard my contributions. Pushed to my limits, I decided it was time for a strategic move, a sort of wake-up call for them. I secretly transferred the funds from the bank account tied to my mother's credit card into another account under my control. I was curious to see her reaction when she found her card declined. Likewise, I reallocated some money from my father's account, which had been essential in supporting our household expenses. From then on, only his medical costs would be taken from this particular account, a detail my mother was not aware of. This shift placed newfound financial pressure on my brother and his wife, challenging them to shoulder the burden I had held for so long. After setting my plan into motion, I packed up my life and announced, "I'm leaving this place." Their faces registered surprise at my declaration. Despite their continuous negative treatment, they hadn't expected me to actually make such a decisive move. However, their smirks seemed to suggest they found some pleasure in my departure. "You're finally leaving. There was never anyone as bothersome as you," they taunted, confident I wouldn't return. "Of course I won't, and don't bother contacting me," I retorted as I walked away. They were still smiling, but I wondered how long their amusement would last once reality set in. In my new sanctuary, I found peace and the space to fully dedicate myself to my work. Then, unexpectedly, my brother reached out, his voice laced with surprise and a hint of desperation. I thought I made it clear not to contact me. "What's the matter?" I asked, not hiding my annoyance. "Oh, that. Well, we didn't know." "Why didn't you tell us?" He stumbled over his words. I tried, remember, but my work and contributions were always dismissed, I reminded him. He tried to shift the blame. "Well, Mom said, and I guess I got confused." "That's not really my fault, is it?" "No, it's not. But now you're experiencing financial strain. Mom's spending habits, coupled with the unpaid bills, it's all on you now. Managing all that was part of how I supported the household. Now that I'm gone, you'll need to figure it out," I explained calmly. The reality of their new financial responsibilities was a stark wake-up call for my brother. Without me to rely on, they were forced to confront the consequences of their actions and attitudes. This move wasn't about revenge. It was about asserting my worth and the value of my contributions, teaching them a lesson in respect and responsibility. As I embarked on a path to personal and professional fulfillment, I was taken aback when my brother reached out for financial help. "I need you to transfer some money into my bank account," he pleaded urgently. I couldn't help but express my disbelief. "Are you serious? You work for a large company. Shouldn't that be enough?" That's when he dropped the bombshell. Actually, I was let go from the job because of a major mistake I made. This revelation left me speechless. It seemed my brother had returned to our parents' home under the assumption that it was financially secure, partly due to my father's retirement pension. I had long wanted to make it clear to him the critical role I played in keeping our family afloat financially. The thought of his surprise upon realizing that it was actually me who had been managing the household's finances was ironically amusing. This surprise would soon extend to his wife and our mother as well. Soon after, my brother's wife joined the plea. "We really need your help. Our savings are running out." My mother chimed in, "Your father is upset and won't be contributing to the household finances anymore. We are in a bind." But I had reached my limit. "I supported you all more than enough. You're all capable of working, so it's time to support yourselves. I'll be cheering you on from afar," I responded, a mix of determination and resignation in my voice. A plea for reconsideration came through the phone, but I stood firm, distancing myself from my brother, his wife, and my mother. My father, too, found it difficult to go back to living with my mother, opting instead for legal advice and a new living arrangement. Thankfully, this allowed me to visit him daily, maintaining our bond. A friend filled me in on my family's current situation. My brother had downsized to a modest apartment, adopting a more frugal lifestyle. My mother, traditionally a homemaker, found adjusting to employment challenging. My brother struggled to accept the perspectives of younger colleagues in his new part-time role, leading to short-lived employment. His wife became the primary breadwinner, working tirelessly until the burden became too great, prompting her departure. Now reports suggest my brother and mother are working hard to make ends meet, though my mother's penchant for overspending continues, leading to accumulating debts. While I worry about their well-being, the distance I've put between us is a reminder of the boundaries I had to set for my own peace of mind and financial security. I've reached a point where providing further financial help isn't possible for me right now. I'm dedicating a lot of energy toward creating a comfortable life for myself. My income has been slowly rising, and I'm thinking about exploring new opportunities. One of my biggest goals is to visit my dad every day. I want to spend quality time with him and see his joyful smile more often.